the NFL could be affected by this
Well,
is.
I think more than anything, it feeds the concerns of parents
Right.
who hear from their young son, I want to play football, and they go, well, gosh, if a 24-year-old linebacker who just passed up a 4-year, $2.9 million contract says he doesn't want to do this, why should I let my son play Pop Warner? And it's been one of the biggest concerns for the NFL in recent years, that the whole culture of football and of doing it as a young child and graduating up through the ranks and maybe becoming a pro is really at risk. But I saw an interview with this guy, Chris Borland, yesterday, and he made it pretty clear. You know, I've spent this past season really thinking about this. I talked to neurosurgeons. I talked to colleagues. I talked to my agent. And since he made the announcement, he said, I have heard overwhelmingly from former players who said, you know what, you're doing the right thing. Kudos to you for having the courage to walk away and not thinking that a $2.9 million contract is the be-all, end-all of your life.
And those former players who have suffered concussions themselves have multi-million-dollar suits against the NFL.
Well, and multi-million-dollar medical bills that aren't necessarily getting paid. The one issue, though, is the fact that the NFL still remains incredibly popular, as does college football. This has not decreased America's interest in the sport. And I think that's where the disconnect is, because I think you're going to have now sort of a haves and have-nots in terms of who's playing football and who's not playing football. Nobody's saying, you know what? At least I have not heard. Let's all turn off NFL football. That'll teach them.
That's not going to happen.
Until they fix this, we're not going to watch NFL. They make billions of dollars. The Super Bowl is still the most talked about sport event.
But I would not be surprised because of exactly what you said. For it to take a while, come up through the ranks. If I had a young son that age, you can bet I would have something else.
And the inverse is true, too. If you look back at the late 80s and the 90s is when soccer took off as a popular sport.
Sure.
20 years later, now that all those kids are adults, look at the fact that soccer TV ratings are now higher than they've ever been. And they say it's because kids started playing it at a young age and interest grew.
Right.
So conceivably, if participation drops now, in 20, 30 years, perhaps ratings will fall.
And it has gotten so much attention. I mean, even President Obama was asked to weigh in if he had a son, if he would let his son play football, and he said, he'd have to think about that.
Yeah.
So a lot of parents are making those decisions, and I think you're right, Diane, that's where it'll have a longer term effect.
Absolutely.
But it's starting now.